Just when you thought I was gone. No, I'm back. Forget that white backdrop. We've traded it in for a dark, sinister backdrop. At least for this show. Next time, who knows? Today is all natural lighting, so if it's inconsistent, blame nature. The trees are moving outside. They're not being helpful at all. People say diamonds are forever, but they've got that wrong. Pretty sure you can destroy a diamond. Paying for URLs is forever. I want to talk about the 5 things you should know, or at least think about, before you buy a domain name. And for those of you who don't know what a domain name is, there's this thing called the internet, and you should probably look into it. Okay, fine, I'll explain it. It's the little www.whatever, again, usually it's com, but it could be net or org or... I mean, they've got a million of them now. It's what most people refer to as a URL. It's actually the domain name, and it points people at your website. You also have to buy a website, just in case you didn't know. Let's begin with the 5 most important things. The most important thing to consider before you buy a domain name is whether or not you're going to have to spell it out for people. When I say that, I mean you should pick a domain name that uses words that people probably know how to spell. It's mind-numbingly awful to have to spell the name of your website for the millionth time. Do not use made-up words, and do not use clever spellings or numbers or things that people just aren't going to intuitively know how to type the minute you say it. You say it, they type it, because if not, it's just like it's a grind. It'll eventually become like a least favorite word, like how people hate moist or blog or lugubrious, and you'll have to say it over and over again. Number 2, this one's going to seem super obvious, but that's only because it is. Shorter is better than longer. Let me say it again. Shorter is better than longer. I think that's pretty much axiomatic. That's pretty logical. It's kind of an Occam razors thing. I feel like I shouldn't have even had to say that, but I did, and it's done, and I kept it short. You're welcome. Number 3, it's going to cost you money for the rest of your life. There are a few of you that are saying, I don't have to keep this domain name forever. But I'm going to tell you a sad story later why you do. It's so sad. The point is, think before you buy, because this is something that will require constant upkeep, or at least constant money. Every year, the domain registrar will come back to you and say, if you want to keep this domain name, you must pay us now. And that brings us to point number 4. If you ever stop making your annual payments, what happens is your domain name goes into a weird limbo. And once it does, it starts costing you more and more money and more trouble to get it back as you go on. You don't want to lose your domain name, unless you really hate it or you're not really using it anymore, in which case you don't really care. And that brings us to point number 5. You do actually care, or at least we actually cared. A little over a year ago, we gave up whatyououghtoknow.com. And I really didn't think about what the net effect would be. We thought, well, we're not really actively doing as much as we used to with it. It won't be a big deal. I mean, we still have the YouTube channel. What You Ought to Know had been a fairly popular site. Like, in its heyday, it had garnered a number of views and been used in classrooms back when we used to host our own material, back when YouTube was banned in classrooms, which I don't think it is anymore. Because it had had some success in the past, an adult website bought the URL. That was really uncomfortable because my mother was still referring people to whatyououghtoknow.com, and that made things awkward. In fact, it was still linked on one of our Facebook pages. That was doubly awkward when fans started asking us about that. Clearly, we don't support the adult entertainment industry. It was really disturbing. You can spend time and effort, and you're building something that's a place where children used to go, and now it's an adult website. Even more disturbing was the fact that the people who owned the website were actually stealing content from our old website to try to legitimize it and make it look like we were a part of it. That's when the lawyers had to come out. Right now, the What You Ought to Know website is shut down. Hopefully it'll stay that way. Actually, hopefully we can buy it back. Because at this point, to keep it from becoming porn again or an adult-themed website, I would definitely buy it back. I would buy it back, and I would pay the domain name registration fees for the rest of my life. Help us get back the What You Ought to Know domain name by becoming a Patreon member? Maybe. That might help. I can't say that it can't hurt. That's what you're looking at when you buy a website. You're basically committing to pay for that URL for the rest of your life. That's what you ought to know about domain names, which means URLs, because it's pretty much the same thing. Some tech person out there is totally going to correct me and say, well, technically a URL and domain name are not the same thing. I don't care. Neither does anyone else. I mean, I care because I don't like to get things wrong, but I really don't. I know just enough to be dangerous. I know that URL means Universal Resource Locator. I can assume from that it points you to places, which it does. The porn website that used to be What You Ought to Know.